Yeah, so I guess self-introductions, starting with this side.
John Cunningham, Contra Costa County.
Andy Dillard, Town of Danville and SWAT.
Tim Tucker Martinez, Transpac.
James Henkamp, City of Lafayette, SWAT.
Nikki Folletta, BART.
Paul Reinders, City of Pittsburgh, Transplan.
Eric Hughes, City of Pleasant Hill, Transpac.
Nathan Landau, AC Transit.
Tom Haraya, Stride Delta Transit.
Steve Kersavan, City of Brentwood.
Kevin Rohani, City of Oakley, Transplant.
Yvette Ortiz, City of El Cerrito.
All right, with that out of the way, any... All right, thank you very much. Public comments, member of the public, invited to address the committee on anything that's not on the agenda. Anybody? Okay, hearing none. Short timer, you know. All right. Approval of minutes. Any motions?
I'll move to approve minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent calendar. Let's see. We don't need anything, take any actions, right? Well, any movement, any motions on the consent calendar?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar approved. Regular agendized items, project monitoring, upcoming obligation deadlines for, well, you know, all the projects. So, Stephanie?
Thank you, Brad. Okay, just a quick update or report on the monitoring report. All of us did, I think we did pretty well on page 4.6. There are 6 OBAC projects programmed for 16-17. 5 out of the 6 have submitted their E76 for authorization. So that was pretty good. We have one that's slightly delayed in Pittsburgh, so hopefully that should be submitted soon. Paul, is it?
Yes, January 3rd, we're expecting to have authorization.
So hopefully everything goes well with that one as well. And then on the inactive list, yeah, there's not a lot of red flags either. Just a reminder, there are a few projects with February 20th as the next invoice submittal date. And then lastly, just a note, I'm currently trying to work with MTC to hold a workshop in spring next year for them to come over to do a workshop on the TIP and FMS process. There were a couple of occasions where locals were a little bit confused about how to amend the TIP for the project changes. So hopefully the MTC folks can come over and do a quick workshop on that process, and hopefully that will also align well with the OBAC project that we have to program with this next cycle. So if you guys have any topics or questions, specific topics that you want to discuss during that workshop, please let me know in the next couple months. I'll take any questions if you guys have them. Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item, the 2017 Spring Transportation Monitoring Effort. Is it Matt? Okay.
Thank you. As you probably remember, every 2 years we, as the congestion management agency for the county, are required to monitor the county's network of the CMP network for the county, and the reason we do it is to look at the level of service at intersections and on the freeways, and look at their performance over time. It's still LOS this time around, even with the passage of Senate Bill 743. The state is still working on the finalizing the CEQA guidelines that document the changes to CEQA regarding level of service, and we're being told that the CMP requirements for monitoring will be changed to reflect the new metric VMT. Somehow we're not sure how they're going to incorporate that into the CMP, but we imagine in the next cycle or two things will change. But for now, we're going to be going out and monitoring the 65 intersections that we've always monitored. Those intersections are just in, actually, let me put up the other map, this map, that shows the CMP intersections in the freeway network. As you can see, those intersections are just in 3 parts of the county: west, central, and east, and then all the freeways. So that's what we do every 2 years. At the same time, this round we will also be doing the MTSO monitoring as part of the action plans, and seeing how those MTSOs perform over time. That's a much bigger effort, but I've included this matrix in your packet. It's really hard to read. It's because there's a whole lot going on, but a lot of the MTSO intersections where LOS is the MTSO and the CMP intersections are one and the same, so we don't double count. We double up and do both monitoring for both efforts at those same intersections at the same time. But you can look at, it's organized by sub-area, then by jurisdiction, so you can see where we will be in your community. And the MTSO monitoring includes level of service at intersections, but it also includes delay indices on freeways and some arterials. It has average side street signal cycle delay, basically the number of signal cycles it takes for someone to access a main street like Treat Boulevard from a side street. We do peak loading factor on BART, so we'll be reaching out to BART to get data on that. Average speed on several arterials. We do HOV lane usage monitoring on the freeway. We do average vehicle occupancy on some freeways and Vasco Road, and VC ratio on arterials. Most of the monitoring will be done the traditional way, where we have either cameras or live people out doing counts. On the freeways, we use INRIX data that we've obtained from MTC, who purchased the data for the entire Bay Area. And that replaced the old TAC runs where people were actually driving down the freeways to collect speed. So that's what will be going on in the spring. We decided to come to you now because we want you to be aware of what's going on. We also want to know if your city requires an encroachment permit to be, set up at an intersection doing counts or install a camera at an intersection. In your packet on page 5.5, I've got a list of the cities that we've had to get encroachment permits in the past from. So we will continue to work with those cities and get permits from them. If there are other cities that aren't on this list, and that you require an encroachment permit, please let me know either today or via email or phone, and so we can start that outreach early. It'll either be myself or our consultant. The consultant is Iteris, who will be reaching out. We also have 52 intersections in TVTC area on the Alameda County side where we don't actually monitor those intersections, but we will contact those cities and collect their monitoring information from them. So there's no additional cost there, but we don't have those cities here anyways. So And then just the basic rules of our monitoring is that we do it midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. Not a day like today where it's rain. If there's any rain at all, we don't do it. We examine all the schools' schedules to make sure that schools are in session, that the colleges are in session, and then we work with our construction manager to make sure there's no construction going on. And then if there's traffic incidents that happen to have happened that day, we go back and do recounts. So that's what we will be doing, and yeah, so we'll have a more detailed plan as part of our overall CMP work plan that will come out during the spring, but we just wanted to let you know that we will be out there sometime between probably late February and early May doing the monitoring. And you'll know a lot more if you need a permit, but because we'll be reaching out to you, but otherwise the count people will have a letter from us stating why they are out there. A lot of times the police will get called by local citizens, and then the police go and ask the counters what they're doing in the field, and we have them show them this letter so it looks official. But sometimes we get calls here wondering what people are doing in the field, and so we try and avoid that kind of thing. So we do as much outreach as we can. So if anybody has any questions, I can take them now, or you can send me a note, whatever.
Go ahead, Steve.
Just to prove that I read it,
Yeah.
the intersection of Marsh Creek and Walnut is in the county. That's not in the city.
Oh, really?
I don't want to take credit for an intersection that's probably running very well.
Marsh Creek. Sorry, you said Marsh Creek and
Marsh Creek
Walnut?
and Walnut's county. I'm giving it to you. Merry Christmas. There you go.
Yeah. You can pay for the maintenance yourself. Okay, that's good.
So this doesn't include any counts of pedestrian or bicycle
Oh, I
volumes.
forgot to mention that all intersection counts, we automatically collect bike and ped approach volumes, basically. Yeah, so, and that information from past cycles is available if anybody needs it. And it's not on the website, but it's probably going to be incorporated into the bike and ped plan update. But if you want counts at a certain intersection now, just let me know. I have all that data.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, review of applications for the coordinated call for projects. So Brad, has the storm hit yet? Figuratively?
Yes. The short answer is yes. F5. Good afternoon. I'm here to talk about what we got. We got 76 applications. They are listed in this handout called Projects Received, Coordinated Call for Projects. This is the presentation I gave to the authority last night, and I will run through the summary that's included. And of course, this is not working. So let me remind you that there are three funding programs. The One Bay Area Grant Program, it's about $56 million. Measure J TLC about $28 million. Measure J PBTF about $8 million available for allocation through these programs. OBAG has a couple of sub-programs, some of which are required by Resolution 4202, which is the resolution MTC adopted to implement the One Bay Area grant. About $4.3 million will go to the authority for our CMA activities. About $4 million will go to Safe Routes to School projects. That funding is allocated by population and enrollment to the RTPCs for review. Federal aid secondary, that goes to the county for updating, improving their roadways. Local streets and roads, the authority earlier agreed to allocate all the remaining STP funds coming through OBAG for allocation by formula to the jurisdictions. That's about $28.5 million. And finally, a competitive program of about $18 million that's allocated competitively throughout the county, though each sub-area will get at least one project. They're top-rated ones. The last two programs, 70% of that roughly, I think it's about 46 million. 70% of that has to be spent in or near priority development areas. So we may have to jiggle projects around to make sure that we meet that. Request for OBAG funds. Well, we got 51 of the 76 who are applied for some form of One Bay Area grant funding. 17 for the competitive, 20 for the local streets and roads. There are 20 jurisdictions in Contra Costa. 13 for Safe Routes to School, and 1 to the county for federal aid secondary. It's about $90.5 million in requests. Now, some sponsors asked to have Measure J, TLC, or PBTF funding along with their OBAG funding. Their requested OBAG funding, to be exact. So, for example, 7 sponsors asked to get Measure J, TLC funding along with their competitive request. 6 sponsors asked for Measure J, PBTF funding along with competitive OBAG funding. At least one has asked for all 3 sources in one application. Local streets and roads, I thought that we would not get any requests for local streets and road plus some Measure J, but there were 4 projects or 4 applications that did. Safe Routes to School, also there were some requests for both OBAG, Safe Routes to School, and some Measure J, TLC, and or PBTF. There were a number of projects that asked only for Measure J funds. 34 asked for Measure J, TLC, and 29 asked for PBTF. 8 asked for the TLC as a match for OBAG, 10 asked for PBTF for a match for OBAG, and 29 asked for Measure J, TLC just by itself, and 21 asked for PBTF just by itself. Not surprisingly, some of the programs are oversubscribed. We had 3 times the amount of requested funding for the competitive program, $52 million compared to $18 million available. Local streets and roads, it's 1.01 because there was a mistake in how much their one jurisdiction's share was. Safe Routes to School, the ratio was 2 to... I'm not naming names, Steve. OBAG, Safe Routes to School, oversubscribed by 2 times. FAS, just a certain amount of money available to the county, so there was no subscription there. TLC was oversubscribed by 2 to 1. PBTF, 6 times more requests than available funding, so that's not going to be fun. Applications by sub-area. West County, 5 applications for competitive, 4 in Central, 5 in East, and 3 in Southwest. Local streets and roads, there were 21 you'll see at the bottom. That's because the county's local streets and road application was for streets in both West and East County. Safe Routes to School, 13, 1 again for federal aid secondary. The Measure J, the number of projects includes those projects applying just for Measure J funds or applying for Measure J funds as a match for OBAG funding. So that's, and because some of the, two of the projects cover more than one sub area, that's why we have 78 listed. The county also applied for a study that covers both Central and Southwest County.
Jason, can I ask a question? So Brad, I do know that East County cannot apply for TLC funding. How many more years is that? Do you know?
Well, our estimate, it'll depend on what the strategic plan funds, but it looks like the next cycle. So starting in fiscal year 23, but it might be later. Check on the strategic plan.
And that was money that was traded so they can fully fund the EBART project out in East County. Okay.
That's right. So Measure J, TLC, I also broke that up by subregion because the RDPCs, as I mentioned earlier, will review those projects. West County, there are 32 million in requests for 11 million available. Central County, 14 million in requests for 10 million available. And Southwest, about 9 million in requests for 6.5 available. So it's it's about 2 to 1. And the process, we're going to review the projects. When I say we, I mean lots of we's. Different, if you look on the projects received handout, you'll note that in the third paragraph that authority staff will review the local streets and roads and the FAS projects, not for ranking, but just to make sure that they're eligible for the funding that's available. The authority staff and the OBAG Measure J working group will review the competitive OBAG applications and will work to put together the final funding program. The regional transportation planning committees will review and recommend the OBAG Safe Routes to School and the Measure J TLC projects. And finally, the Countywide Bike PED Advisory Committee will review the PBTF applications and may go out and visit the most highly ranked of those. Our ultimate goal is try to fund as many of the projects as we can and to minimize the number of projects that have to go through Caltrans local assistance. I know that at a minimum we're going to have, well, I'm not sure what the minimum is now I add them up, but at least all of the local streets and roads projects will have to go through that local assistance process. All of the competitive OBAG projects, there could be, I'm guessing, at least 5 of those. All of the Safe Routes to School projects will have to go through it, as well as the county's FAS. And the schedule is that projects were due last Friday. We're setting aside 3 months for everyone to do the reviews. We're going to allow sponsors to review their scores early in April and make comments. We allowed that the last time through. And then finally, the OBAG Measure J working group will work with staff to come up with a funding plan and do that in late April and early May. Give it back to you guys for review on May 18th, and then Planning Committee and Authority approval in June. We actually have until the end of July to submit our list, but I wanted to give, I didn't want to delay the process any more than it had to be, but also give enough time for people to review the projects. We do have, if there's any kind of delay, we do have another month in the schedule if we need it. So with that, if you have any other questions, I'll try to answer them. Also, I will be asking for some volunteers to serve on the working group as well.
Brad, when the final list is approved, then, at least for the OBAG competitive, it then gets forwarded to MTC. Yeah, and then so that would be another subsequent several months before we find the final award.
The recommended program has to get submitted to MTC, and then all of you sponsors will have to enter your project information into the fund management system, or the FMS. That you'll do in August, and then once all of those are entered, then MTC, I can't remember if they're scheduled to approve the recommendation September or October, but sometime in the fall of 2017. You had a number of things that you had to put into your applications by last Friday. By the time we get down to approving the final list, there's another thing that sponsors will have to do, and that's the local compliance checklist. That will be due at the beginning of June, as will your adoption of a surplus land resolution. The local compliance checklist is a checklist that says that you comply with all the various multitudinous requirements that the OBAG program has. The surplus land resolution is one of those. It is available on our website. If you don't have it, visit there or ask me and I'll forward you the model that MTC put together. Or you can go to MTC's OBAG 2 website, and they have a lot of information and resolutions and checklists and all sorts of other things that you might need on their website, including Resolution 4202. And then when you get your funding and that's approved, then the city has to adopt a resolution of local support, basically saying that you will do all that's required to implement your project, including providing the required match and meeting the various funding deadlines that MTC and Caltrans and FHWA have established. That has to be uploaded when you upload the information to the FMS to show that you have in fact adopted that resolution. And that all has to be done by the end of August. The funding program will also have dates recommended for which fiscal year your funding is programmed in, which means that some of you may get your preservation funding in fiscal year 17, but you might get it in fiscal year 21. We're going to have to make those programming decisions, and they'll be based on the readiness information that you put in your application. Does that answer? Cover it? Thanks.
Any other questions?
Jason, I have 2 questions. So, Brad, when will TCC, or I'm sorry, this subcommittee that will start looking at the preliminary ranking, when will they start that process? And will we see the first review of that at the January TCC meeting?
Well, there are 17 applications, so no, not in January.
Okay.
But I have to put together the scoring sheets and get the information, figure out how to best to get the applications out to the reviewers. And that's for all of the applications for all of the programs. So I don't expect to have the scoring done by the January TCC meeting, or the first draft of it, more likely in February or March.
So then when will the subcommittee convene to start reviewing? So early February?
We'll probably meet in January, though not necessarily to have the final.
And then for those jurisdictions that submitted for competitive TLC and PBTF, on this list of projects, they're not listed. It's only, for example, Santa Maria, we're only listed once. Is there a reason for that, or should we just be listed under competitive? Because we actually applied for 3 funding sources for one project. So I don't see our project listed under Southwest TLC or under the PBTF.
It should be.
Unless I'm missing it, I don't see it.
I know why. I'll fix it.
Okay.
It is.
I thought you were already removing us from those
No, no,
funding
no.
sources.
Not like that.
It's a lot
I
easier.
know.
It would be easier, yes, but I'm not.
Who? I don't know. I seceded from the union.
No, it had to do with how I sorted the spreadsheet.
Okay. So we should be listed. You'll fix that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's an El Cerrito project with the same thing, so just.
Yeah, and that would
Okay.
be for the same reason.
Same thing with Pleasant Hill.
Yeah, all for the same reason.
Just for the recording. Anybody else has a project missing? Just kidding. Hey, Sean.
Yes. Yes, before we're done with this item, I'll be asking for volunteers or suggestions if not. What we hope to have for the subcommittee is someone from each of the 4 subregions. It would be great if someone from a transit agency and someone from the county would agree to serve on it. You'll have 17 applications to review. So it will take some time. Some of them are very big. Some of you were not very good at editing how much information you provided us. Just fine. It's complete. It just makes a really big file.
Eric, sorry.
Hi, Brad. ENIAC also submitted for 3 funding sources, so we look in that also. I'm curious about if the scoring when for the people apply for more than funding source, more than one funding source. We're going to do the competitive first scoring on that and see where the funding is going to allocate it, and go to the other 2 other funding, or how
It's all be done concurrently.
Okay. Okay.
I don't want.
Not sure how
The idea
it's gonna
was that
work.
you'll have these different. It's sort of like crowdsourcing.
Right.
The information. That's the way I thought of it this morning. Maybe it's not a good analogy, but it seemed reasonable that you'd have these different groups looking at different projects based on somewhat different purposes. The funding programs are often similar, but not the same, quite the same. And one thing that the group will have to, and staff will have to figure out is which funding source would be best. We're assuming that the bigger, if the working group thinks that project A is great and should be funded with OBAG competitive, and so does the TLC reviewer, whichever regional committee, we'll choose the one probably if it's a smaller project, we'll fund it with that TLC. And if it's a larger project, we'll fund it with OBAG. And that's because we want to have as few projects going through Caltrans. The more projects that Caltrans has to look at, the slower the process. That's slower for you. And it's a much more onerous process than going through and getting Measure J only funding. So, but there are some projects that will need funding from multiple sources, and some didn't provide any local match and asked for Measure J as a match. So there's going to have to be some of that going along as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions for Brad? Thank you. And I guess we're looking for volunteers.
Yes, please.
How many are we looking for?
Well, we had about 7 people on the working group that helped put together the call for projects itself. So it would be great to have at least 6 or 7. on the committee. One, again, at least one from each sub area. The person who served on it earlier is no longer with the jurisdiction that they represented. And that's true for some of the other people as well that were on the committee, the earlier committee. I don't see a huge rush, but
Yeah, Anya, because we could like to volunteer.
So you're doing at least a minimum of at least one person from each RTPC?
yes, please.
Right. So unless Andy or James objects, I can represent SWAT.
I nominate Lisa for SWAT.
Any other takers? You want to take it for transit?
Yeah.
Okay. You got that, Brad?
I do. Got my pen out.
Okay.
And I'll get the transplant, East County.
Okay. You got Ahmed for East County transplant.
Okay.
Anybody from Transpac?
I think I'm the only WICTAC representative here, so I guess
You
count me in.
volunteering? Okay.
You could volunteer someone else.
Nikki? No, you're a transit operator.
How much time would it, I mean, I guess how many days are you giving the subcommittee for reviewing these?
Well, at least through January. That's one of the reasons why I set aside 3 months for the committees to do their review, is to make sure that, because everyone has other work that they're being paid to do. So I didn't want to compress it into too short a time for the reviewers. So at least through January for the reviews.
Okay. John?
Mary Holly from the county will participate.
Okay.
How many is that so far? 5?
Yeah, we need someone from Central County.
I'd be happy to be on it as well if you need anyone else. This is Nikki Folletta from
Yeah.
BART.
I can do Central County if there's no other, unless
Unless
Tim.
you can talk to someone else.
I mean, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Eric. Great.
There you go.
And if you know of anyone else who would, I mean, we could have another person, if you want to. I'll mention this to the RTPCs as well, the managers.
Okay. Anything else you need for this item?
No.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad, and good luck to everybody. Anyways, any other items or topic discussion? If not, I guess we're adjourned. Happy holidays.
Well, I'm thinking.
Because when we took the ATP,
Mhm.
we had like different groups, so each group did like
5.
yeah, or whatever that X number is. 17 is
I
I
know.
was thinking if you can get 2 from each RTPC, you can have 2 groups, so each group would only do
8.